Okay, I'm gonna go. Ready. Call to order?
Yeah. Where's my agenda? There it is. This is the regular meeting of the Land Use Board of the Township of Greenwich. Adequate notice of this meeting has been given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, in that a notice was published in the Express Times and Star Ledger newspapers. Notice was posted on the municipal bulletin board in the Township Administration Building in Greenwich Township, New Jersey, and notice was filed with the Township Clerk.
Great, thank you. Roll call?
Mr. Bruce Williams is not going to be here tonight. Mr. Mark Scuderi,
Here.
Mr. Paul Beam,
Here.
Mr. Joseph Chichello,
Here.
Mr. Brian Baylor indicated that he would be late tonight. Ms. Kathy Cullen. Here. Mr. Gary Hill.
Here.
Mr. Joseph Fiamma.
Here.
Mr. Jeremy Blunt advised that he was not going to be here tonight. Miss Andrea Sherlock. Here. Mr. Rocky Stein. Mr. George Bradlaugh.
Here.
Miss Dana Parker.
We got
Board Attorney, Mr. John Drill.
here, so Parker's absent, and Stein is absent so far?
Yes. And then Bruce and Jeremy are both absent, but they requested to be absent. Board Engineer, Mr. Mike Finelli.
Here.
Board Planner, Ms. Kendra Lely. Here.
Okay, flag salute. All right, board, so I'm not Bruce Williams, as you can tell. So we'll get through this. This is my very first time up in this beautiful seat. We're gonna start out with the approval of the minutes. Any of the.
We need a motion to approve the ones that aren't here.
Yeah, a motion to excuse the people that asked for excuses.
I will motion to excuse Mr. Williams and the other one that has to be excused.
Mr. Williams and Mr. Blunt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second?
Second, and then George. Okay. Mr. Mark Scuderi.
Yes.
Mr. Paul Beam.
Yes.
Mr. Joseph Chichello.
Yes.
Ms. Kathy Cullen. Yes. Mr. Joseph Fiamma.
Yes.
Mr. Gary Hill.
Yes.
Ms. Andrea Sherlock.
Yes.
Mr. George Bradlaugh.
Yes. All right, next will be our approval of the minutes from the August 10th, 2023 regular meeting. Any member have any comments on the minutes from August 10th, 2023? Not, I'll solicit a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll motion to approve.
Gary.
I'll second.
And. Okay, Mr. Bruce Williams is absent tonight. Mr. Mark Scuderi.
Yes.
Mr. Paul Beam.
Yes.
Mr. Joseph Chichello.
Yes.
Mr. Brian Baylor is not here yet. Ms. Kathy Cullen.
Yes.
Mr. Joseph Fiamma.
Yes.
Mr. Gary Hill.
Yes.
And Ms. Dana Parker is absent tonight.
That's 6 in favor? How many
Correct.
you have?
Yes, 6 in favor. 3 absent.
All right, next order of business is our public hearing application for concept review. Applicant is D4 Properties LLC. Before we get started, I'll just ask Mr. Drill to explain to the board what a concept review is.
So even though this is listed as a public hearing, this is not a public hearing. It's non-noticed. Under the municipal land use law, NJSA 40:55D-10.1 provides for an informal review of a developer's concept plan. I'm gonna read from the statute. It's at the request of the developer, the planning board shall grant an informal review of a concept plan for a development for which the developer intends to prepare and submit an application for development. The amount of any fees for such informal review shall be a credit towards fees for review of the application for development. The developer shall not be bound by any concept plan for which review is requested, and the planning board shall not be bound by any such review. So in essence, it allows a developer, an applicant, to request a review, which the board must grant, but if it's a permitted use. If it's a prohibited use, it would go to the Board of Adjustment. There's no provision for the Board of Adjustment to do any concept reviews, and in fact, there's some case law that says that would be inappropriate. So the first thing that the applicant should address when they present their concept is explain why this is a permitted use, so that this that this board acting as a planning board. This is a planning board that also has the powers of a board of adjustment. So to make sure it's appropriately here. That's what the MLUL says about the concept review.
Perfect. And it's my understanding we don't need to swear any witnesses.
That's correct. There's no swearing of witnesses. This is not it's not a hearing. Also, that microphone that you over there does not work.
Okay.
So you have to speak loud.
No problem.
Project to the,
Okay, that one
yeah, the
right there.
feeling mic. That's right.
Not a problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Drill. Josh Gorski, Mandelbaum Barrett, excuse me, on behalf of the applicant, standing in for the normal attorney, Mr. Michael Lapari, who's not in today.
And how do you spell your last name?
Gorsky.
Okay.
We are here, as Mr. Drill just explained, for a concept review of a site plan application. Addressing the jurisdiction right off the top. Applicant is seeking to use the property as a light industrial use, which as per the current zoning is a permitted use in this particular zone. Therefore, it's our position that this board does have jurisdiction as a planning board to hold the concept review.
And in my opinion, if in fact they're proposing a light industrial use, then that's correct. Then that would be permitted in the zone, and this board does have jurisdiction to engage in the concept review. And if, I know that some board members, the chairman who's not here, had asked me to send out questions, which I did, and the applicant responded to them. And I believe Amy handed out at everyone's desk the list of questions and their answers. And you guys should feel free after they make the presentation, if you have any questions about why so big, you know, if it's really an industrial use, et cetera, you fire away. But at this point, it's my opinion that they're proposing an industrial use. Industrial use is allowed in the zone, so the board can hear this concept review.
Thank you. Throughout the presentation, we'll hear about the layout of the site. We'll touch a little bit more on the zoning use. We'll discuss some issues around parking and traffic, and hopefully alleviate any concerns in respect to those. With us, we have various members of the applicant, if they should be needed to answer any questions. We also have our engineer, Jeff Martell of Stonefield Engineering, who's going to lead the presentation, walk through the items as we intend to do so, and be around to answer any questions. With that, Jeff, you want to come up and
Sure.
sorry.
Yeah, sure. Good evening. Jeffrey Martell from Stonefield Engineering and Design, surveyors, engineers, planners, civil engineers, traffic engineers, etc. So the presentation before you this evening is for a 43-acre tract. Especially it's block 31, lot 12. It's an ROM zone, currently in agricultural use on the property. The proposal is for a 283,000 square foot light industrial building. We're proposing on the plan here, you can see in the center of the parcel here, the tan building. And then what we've done is a design that's pretty common in industrial type settings, where we have one side of the building that's predominantly for passenger cars, and then another side of the building that's more designed for truck traffic. So on the passenger car side, we have 330 parking spaces, including EV parking. The truck side, or the north side, there's a total of 70 loading docks and 216 tractor trailer parking spaces. Towards the front of the site, some notable features include a series of berms. Obviously, we're putting what we think is the more attractive side of the building towards the roadway. That would be the customer side of things, the employee side of things. So that would be the car parking, the main front doors, etc.
Where is the front? You're defining the front.
Generally, the south face of the building, which is the long face towards the bottom of the page. And the car parking is on that side. Also notable is we have a series of berms around the property. Obviously an industrial use in nature. We want to provide appropriate level screening and just provide an aesthetic surrounding to the property. Immediately to the north is the way station. There is a row of trees, existing vegetation that would remain on that side as well. generally speaking, they'd be pretty well encapsulated within the property with the existing vegetation and the addition of additional vegetation and berming as well.
Is the vegetation on the applicant's property or on the?
Both. So we're maintaining what's the required buffer along that portion of the property in terms of retaining existing vegetation, and then there's also vegetation off the property as well. Again, this kind of separation between potential truck areas and car parking areas is generally deemed as an appropriate layout for a light industrial use, and we think appropriate in this setting as well. We do have a sole means of ingress and egress to the property along the property frontage. I will note that the stream has a flood hazard area and a riparian buffer that encroach onto the property. What we've done is we've essentially taken all the development outside of those buffer areas and that flood areas, with the sole exception of the driveway itself.
Ask a quick question.
Sure.
What should we?
Yeah, so this is just a slightly enhanced version of what you're looking at. Obviously, we colorized it and rendered it here for the presentation.
Well, we have A1 and A2. You have 1 of 1.
Yeah, so I just zoomed it out and it's just again, similar to an exhibit. This is a formal hearing. We just
Do you have
enhanced
a
it.
copy of that we can hand out to the board?
Sure.
That's why I can see everyone kind of looking, not seeing the same thing. That's why.
Yeah. No problem. Hand out a couple. Various.
Do you have enough to hand out to everybody?
I believe I do. The direction.
Yeah.
So there's only one more. You have one more?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yes. Briefly said, Mr. Bill, this is essentially just an enhanced version of the two sheets that you had. It's colorized, it's zoomed out a little bit to show the entire track. And some labels added, but substantively, it's essentially the same product that we submitted to the board.
Okay, so this is titled the overall concept plan rendering 1 of 1 dated October 11, 2023, prepared by Stonefield, correct?
Correct.
And it is not to scale, I assume, right?
What you have is not to scale, it's an 11 by 17, what's presented here on the easel is to scale.
Okay, and what, is that 100, or is that like more, a lot more?
This is 150,
150,
yeah.
okay.
Fit it on the page.
I get it.
Yeah, again, concept level presentation, we wanted to paint the picture of the whole property. The sheets that the board has kind of cut off a portion of the property. So we wanted to present it in its entirety. In terms of the use, we've spoken about that. There is no tenant for the property, so we do understand, looking at this particular layout, I would say it's a little bit generic in nature without having an exact tenant. We've kind of built in some flexibility there on the loading dock and potentially some trailer parking areas. But what I would say to the board is from a macro level, the idea of having generally a rectangular building, having parking on one side, having potential truck access on the other side, is a tried and true layout. Whether the tenant needs all of those loading docks, all of those truck parking spaces, at this point, we've generally looked to show the board a potential maximum development scenario. That tenant may come back and say they need less loading docks, they may need less truck parking, things of that nature. It's always easier to scale back, obviously, than come back to the board and ask for additional. So somewhat of a generic layout, but important for us to get feedback at this point. So we wanted to present a plan that we think represents the maximum development for the light industrial use on the property. And obviously, we'd love to hear any comments, feedback, or discussion from the board.
Well, I guess I'll start. The term that's being used a lot, light industrial. I think if you looked at 10 different codes and looked at the definition of light industrial, it could vary a little bit. And you don't have any tenants at this point. but I assume your client, the applicant, knows that there is a demand for this type of space as opposed to, I'll call it typical warehouse space.
Yeah, that's his question. Does,
My understanding is yes, they think there's a market demand for the need, yeah.
is this gonna be flex space or is this light industrial?
It's light industrial. Could it be more than one tenant? Yes, but not, I would say flex space is typically pretty flexible in terms of the number of uses. I mean, our intention is light industrial, but it could be divisible into, two wings of the building.
So
or
for
something of that
example,
nature.
In the answer, so the chairman had wanted to know, I'm referring to the email from Melissa McIntyre to me, dated September 7th, which everyone has in their packet. And question number 2 was indication of how many separate tenant users there'll be in the proposed building with a description of the proposed light industrial uses proposed. And the answer was, we currently do not have a tenant for the property. In an ideal world, this will be a single tenant building. However, we've created a flexible design to accommodate as many as 4 tenants total. As the tenants have not been selected, a list of potential light industrial uses to incur on the site are as follows, and there's 15 uses. Have you seen this email?
I'm seeing it now.
Okay, so why don't you read that and then answer Mike's question again?
What was the question, Mr. Jones?
Is this gonna be marketed, is this considered flex space or is this light industrial?
Well, is there a definition of flex? I mean, I know what it means generally in the marketplace, but we're proposing light industrial, could be multiple tenants. The email says here potentially up to 4. So it would just be 4 tenants that would be within the list of permitted uses, likely within the 15 that are listed here. I don't know if you're deeming that flex or not. I wouldn't necessarily call that flex, in my opinion, but that's kind of a loose term that's used in the industry.
This list of 15 uses, potential uses, that was provided by, Mr. DiPolera.
That was,
As the,
well, if this thing came from Stonefield, it came from, is Melissa McIntyre out there somewhere? in the
No,
audience?
she's not here.
So this, who is Melissa McIntyre from Stonefield?
She's an engineer that works at our office.
Okay, you know where she got this
was
information from?
provided that from the applicant.
that's why I said, Mr. DiPolera must have given her those uses, I would imagine,
The
right?
applicant provided that.
Right, do you know who?
Mister.
Do you mind if I
No,
jump in?
yeah.
So, my name's Nick.
Come on up to the front so the mics can pick you up, identify yourself and your relationship to the
Yep.
applicant.
My name's Nick DiPolera. I'm a member and partner at D4 Properties, family-owned business based out of Bloomingdale, located in Passaic County. You're referring to a combination of my email as well as some correspondence back and forth with Stonefield and their team. When I used the term flexible, it wasn't related to flex space. It was a flexible design that could accommodate a variety of different uses and sizes to allow us to have the largest tenant market pool possible to allow our success. The question related to the uses, those were a variety of different uses that, again, we worked with Stonefield on putting together. To date, again, it's very difficult to say what this development would look like and what a tenant, what type of tenants would be attracted to it 2 to 3 years out. And that's just the nature of the reality. That's how long entitlements typically take when you're dealing with the TEP, TOT and yourselves. So that being said, again, the intent of this plan was just try to make it as attractive to the largest variety of tenants out there today to, again, allow our success and find a tenant that can make this a long-term home.
Okay, so I assume that somebody has reviewed these 15 uses and their opinion is that they fit within light industrial operations, and I'm quoting from the ordinance, including processing, manufacture, fabrication, finishing, or assembly of goods or material. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Chill, but ultimately we would defer the final determination to the board.
Yeah,
So
that's, what I'm gonna
That's
ask,
our
yeah, I'm
opinion.
gonna ask Kendra Lely, the board's planning expert, if she's looked at these 15 uses and, for example, a bakery. Right, does a bakery fit? In a light industrial use?
But all due respect, Mr. Drill, and certainly understand a lot what you're asking of Ms. Lilly, but this was a prospective list. The idea is whatever the board determines to be a permitted use in terms of that definition is what we would ultimately defer to. We didn't have the opportunity to review this list officially with anybody. It was conceptual meeting, prospective list in an effort to give clarity to what the applicant's intentions are. But if there's a disagreement on any of these 15, we would ultimately defer to whatever the determination is.
And how many car or, small vehicle parking spaces are there in the front? And how many truck parking spaces are there in the back? And how many loading docks?
330 car.
Well, isn't it really 344? Because with the EV spaces,
Yeah,
I mean, they're parking spaces, so.
misleading, yeah,
Okay.
kind of misleading, but yeah, with the EV credit, it would be a equivalent 344.
So that's different between the concept A that we have in your 101, correct?
Yes.
The concept A shows 544 parking spaces. And the rendering shows 330. Look
Yeah,
at the parking towards the front.
Right, so this is a slightly modified version, but reduced in terms of that parking space, yeah,
Right, but the requirement appears to be 566 spaces,
correct,
so you'd be short 200 some odd spaces.
correct. Yeah.
That's what I was gonna ask. What causes the requirement to be the 564 spaces?
It's a requirement of one parking space per 500 square feet based on the land use. Obviously, it'd be a conversation down the road, but we think that that would be over parking the site and, should this move forward, we'd be discussing, potential variance justification for a reduced number of parking spaces. The applicant in this case feels that that's more parking than needed. It'd be more along the lines of 1 per 1,000 for a light industrial type use. But obviously that'd be a discussion for another day.
And how many truck spaces are indicated on what we reviewed, A1 and A2, versus how many truck spaces are on the sheet 1 of 1?
I think that is hopefully the same. There's
Yeah,
70
yes.
loading docks on both. And there's 216 trailer spaces.
And where did that come from?
At this point, that's just a perspective number. So we essentially looked at the zoning, the use, but then there's a lot coverage and there's a floor area ratio. So essentially, as I said in my introduction, we don't have a tenant. So this is generally a maximum type development that could potentially be before the board. If we have a tenant and we find we need less loading docks, less trailer spaces, then we would simply eliminate those.
And the proposed development as shown on the overall concept plan rendering, which you have up on that board, does it require any C variances or is this totally ordinance compliant?
Totally ordinance compliant with the parking space.
Right, except for the parking.
Correct, so buffers, setbacks, floor area ratio, various dimensional requirements. Obviously, we don't have a sign package, we don't have things of that nature, but in terms of the higher, levels of zoning criteria, bulk, et cetera, setback, dimensional type, items, there's no other variances identified at this time other than the number of parking spaces.
Good.
Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you.
That's okay, John. Seems like a long time ago. Two things. In your cover letter, it's on Stonefield letterhead, so I'll look at you. Where you submitted the application to Miss Fleming. And I'm not sure who composed it, but it references 544 parking spaces.
Right,
When I read that, or read it, that to me sounds like that's what's being proposed. And obviously that's far greater than what is being proposed, correct?
Right, so we had submitted a concept, Mr. Pennelly, with the,
The A1 and A2, Mike, the big sheets that you
Yeah,
have.
I got 'em right here.
544, they said they revised it down to 330 with EV, which is the equivalent of 344. They revised
Oh,
it,
so the two concept plans show
They're different.
544?
yeah, they revised it
Okay,
yesterday.
I never added them up,
Yeah.
they're all listed okay, fine.
yeah, so we pulled out a couple parking rows that ultimately the applicant and various discussions with brokers and market folks thought that was more than what was needed.
Yeah, and I see now, looking at the two next to each other, okay, fine. And then second question is to Mr. Di Polero. The answers to these questions that you provided, the 15 example uses. Is that based upon, do you have any operations like this right now that you have, that these are typical?
So I work on the development end as well as the brokerage end. So I'm in touch with the market just in general, with other developers representing them on their behalf and or tenant requirements. Companies looking for more space throughout New Jersey or Pennsylvania, Connecticut, et cetera. And just in general, it's very difficult when you speak about specific uses to put kind of your thumb on it today and say, hey, this is going to be the use 2.5 to 3 years out. There's a large variety of different companies, more and more coming, especially from manufacturing, just everything going on within today's world. So that being said, again, that list was more so trying to provide examples of what it could be, not necessarily encompass all of the uses that are out in today's marketplace.
And I thought that Mike asked you, have you done any other of these
Oh,
anywhere?
development.
Yeah, do you
Oh,
own
specific
or
so we have-
manage a light industrial use similar to what you're proposing here?
So no, we're actually working, the other project that we have currently is up north in Passaic County, located in a town called Wanacue Borough. It's right off 287. That project we're doing in 2 phases. We're waiting on DEP approval, but that's a 272,000 square foot facility. All uses are permitted there, heavy industrial, et cetera. So it's designed differently. It's a cross dock building, which is more attractive just because these users look for how many trucks can come and go and how quickly they can move product in and out of a building. This being light industrial, we opted to actually move forward with a single-sided loading building, which just means rear loading docks, and that's more conducive to the lighter uses.
So what you're saying is, your first project is in Wanacue, heavy industrial, this is your second project that you're proposing here, and this is light industrial.
Correct.
So how'd you come up with the square footage that's needed for a building,
But we look to just conform, for this particular project or in general?
this particular project?
It's just conforming to the existing
Maxing out
zone.
the square footage as much as possible.
Well, to a degree, yes, because that's what tenants pay rent on. But that being said, if the property, given the shape and size, wasn't conducive for that square footage, we wouldn't move forward with a plan that we wouldn't think was marketable. For example, slanting the walls, having limited loading docks, not enough car parking. At the end of the day, you want to build a building that's gonna bring you and your investors the highest return, but at the same time, still be marketable, right? Because a vacant building doesn't do anyone any good.
Right, so you obviously, came in to try to be in conformance with the ordinance, but then the new plan shows a deficit of 200
Right.
parking spaces. So I guess I'm curious as to why you wouldn't have then reduced the amount of building space if you didn't think you could meet the parking requirement.
So we can meet the parking requirement. It's just, I personally haven't seen a use out there today that would require that amount. It's just really at the end of the day, overkill, for lack of a better term.
And that's based on what experience?
Working in the brokerage community for actually at this point, 8 years.
In the
now,
light industrial,
all across the board.
but you just said you didn't do any other light industrial building.
No, that I'm speaking about
developer.
brokerage.
As a
Yeah.
developer.
Oh,
He's
as a
saying-
broker.
Yes.
you have.
Yes.
And you have, so you Okay, that's fine.
So even like, for example, Amazon operations, who typically have the highest ratio of car parking, would not require 544 car parking.
As far as the trailer parking spaces, I'm sorry, Mike, I took your.
That's all right, he's used to it, go.
Yeah.
Trailer stalls that you have, shown here, can you explain what that parking is? It says 108 trailer stalls, but they look like they are double loaded. What, is that where you would anticipate storage of trailers?
Again, not knowing the tenant, it's possible that the tenant has their own trucks and they may have, you know, some staging of vehicles and things of that nature. It wouldn't be storage to the extent that anybody other than the user wouldn't be using it, you know, it's not gonna be rented for storage or something of that nature, but a tenant may have, you know, dozen trucks, 20 trucks or something like that in their fleet. And there may be a use for that. To the extent there's not, when a tenant's selected, again, we simply eliminate it, but again, it's providing a maximum kind of footprint or format for the applicant to hopefully market the property successfully. And your question on parking, we could comply with parking and still be under lot coverage. At this point, we just wanted to be transparent that we don't think, you know, that there's a need for a compliant number of parking spaces, but again, a conversation for another day. If that variance isn't looked upon favorably, it's something, we could provide more parking, less green space, but we could still be under the lot coverage requirement.
And should that be the case hypothetically, there's enough area remaining to accommodate the stormwater management impacts of, that's a lot of extra paving.
It is, but it's a 50% lot coverage, so there's still a good chunk of the property, and because it's agricultural, generally our intention was to use cleared spaces, you know, already cleared agricultural uses for stormwater, but there's an abundance of area for stormwater management.
With regards to the trucks, if we can stand up for a second, the circulation routes, how does a truck come into and ingress and egress the site from 78?
In other words, trace the route, go 78 coming east, has to get to the site, 78 west has to get to the site, and then her next question is gonna be from the site, the 78 east, from the site, 78 west.
Yeah, I think both east and west, it would come from Route 73, there's a full interchange.
Okay, but start on Route 78, give us the exit number. And then put us on to
Sure.
173 and bring us in.
Other than that.
Exit 6, if you're coming to the site from Interstate 78, exit 6, eastbound, you would take exit 6, come down Bloomsbury Road onto 173 right into the site. It can't be any closer. That exit actually abuts the north end of this property. To go from our site to 78 westbound, same path, just under the overpass of 78 onto exit 6, and then exit 7 further east.
Well, hold it. From Route 173.
Oh, 1 second real quick, because there's one.
That's not that, it's the same way.
Because that was gonna be my question, how are they gonna advertise it?
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes.
Can you make this easier on us?
Sure.
Do the Route 78, okay, Route 78 eastbound is exit 6. Bloomsbury Road, Route 173, correct?
Entering.
Yes.
Well, no, okay.
This section.
But can somebody with the laser pointer?
Yeah, it's off the map, there's, again, this is a prospective use, I can't say exactly every route that somebody could come with based on the size of their truck, or, you know, there could be smaller vehicles, box trucks, things of that nature that
Assume
don't
a
have.
tractor trailer.
A tractor trailer, there's the full interchange immediately to the
Okay,
south.
so again, you're on Route 78 headed east, correct?
heading east, you would go to the 173 interchange and come up Route 173 and enter the site on Route 173.
Okay, what's the exit number to get onto, from Route 78 west, from east, Route 78 heading east? What's the exit number that gets you onto Route 173?
7.
Well, wait a second.
Yes, based on his question, yes.
East.
Headed east.
That's-
And it is
East
getting
on
onto
78.
173, yes.
Headed east,
Exit
you know.
6 would be onto one Bloomsbury Road, then 173. So based exactly on how he questioned it, the answer was correct. It would be
Okay.
exit 7, because only exit 7 puts you right on 173.
Well, right, because
Exit
he
6.
hasn't mentioned that you're on County Route 632 for a short period. of
Well, that's
time.
what I'm,
Correct,
that's
but
what
that-
didn't sound right.
That's what, but based on the way he questioned it.
What I
the
said,
answer was right there. Yes.
No, not what Nick said. Basically, well,
Listen, start again, but
good.
Kendra wants to know, and she wants the board to know what route most likely for tractor trailers to take. From Route 78 headed, if the truck's eastbound, what's the most likely route for the tractor trailer? And then if the tractor trailer's headed westbound, what's the most likely route to get to the site? So who can answer that?
Well, I think it's a matter of opinion, that's why maybe there's slightly.
it's 7 and 6.
Okay, so give both of them then. Give Route 78 east, exit 7, give me the route, and then give me Route 78 east. And with that exit 6, and give me
Well,
the route.
7 can accommodate coming and going east or west.
Listen, do me a favor. I'm not asking about west right now. I don't wanna get apples and oranges. I'm just asking about Route 78 east. Next, I'm gonna ask about Route 78 west. Route 78 east on a tractor trailer. Give me the route if it gets off at exit 7. What happens?
7 exit ramp to Route 173 to the site.
Are you sure?
Yes.
I'm looking at it.
Well, no, because
You
if
get off
if I'm the
at
driver
That's-
and I'm getting off at 6,
Right.
if you're on
Mike,
78
I,
east.
listen, I understand that. I asked
That's what I'm
him,
saying, I'm not hearing, go ahead, John. What?
I'm asking him, I wanna know
Trailer.
tractor trailer, not vehicles, most likely route. I'm also asking him about Route 78 getting off at exit 6. Okay,
Okay, I don't understand why a trucker wouldn't get off at 6. That's my point. He answers 7. My question
okay, you
is,
think it's more likely
I
the truck's
think
gonna go off at
it's, that's
6?
where
Absolutely.
you go. Why would your, if you're a tractor trailer driver, and I'm not, why would you
Go
get
past.
yourself
Yeah.
in that quadrant in Bloomsbury with, at exit 7? Why? You would avoid that like the plague. Exit 6 takes you right down to 632, you make a right, bang, you're there.
Depends if you have to get off for the waste
But-
station.
But
Depends
that's
on where you're
only
in
if
it,
you're
right.
going to the facility. If you're
Right.
leaving the facility and you wanna go.
I
east.
understand.
Well, we didn't get there
haven't-
yet.
We haven't got there yet. I'm just,
He
my
he
God, I'm just
gave
trying
that
to,
before.
I just wanna find out the most likely tractor trailer route in the 4 different possibilities. So let me ask, the one of the two of you, do you agree with Mike that it's more likely than not that if you're a tractor trailer, there's no way you're going to exit 7 and coming back, you're gonna get off at exit 6? You agree or disagree?
I would say it's definitely more direct access to the site.
So, okay, so now even, I don't wanna say it, I don't want Mike to say it, so give me the route. If a tractor trailers on Route 78 East and they get off at exit 6, you're telling me they get onto what road? Route 632,
Bloomsbury.
Bloomsbury
It would
Road.
be the access point from 6, yes,
and then what? Then they get onto Route 173, correct?
yes.
Okay, now, if I'm a tractor trailer, I'm on Route 78 West. Tell me, in your opinion, the most likely route to the site from Route 78 West.
7 to 173.
That's correct. Okay, now, I'm on the site. And I'm a tractor trailer and I wanna get to Route 78 East. What do I do? What's the most likely route?
173 to Bloomsbury to 6.
Mike, do you agree with that?
No, to 7.
Can't go.
You said
Can't
6.
get on
He
the-
said you're going east.
Oh, I'm sorry, east, yeah.
Yeah, if you're going east, it's 7.
Sorry, west.
Yeah, you're getting off, right.
Yeah.
That's,
So from the site, I get on Route 173 and then I get on
Exit 7.
Route 78 East at exit 7, is that correct?
that's correct.
And then finally, from the site, I'm in a tractor trailer, I wanna get onto Route 78 West. what's the most likely route?
173 Bloomsbury. Exit 6, or entrance 6.
Hey, Mike, you agree?
No,
Okay,
you would go to the intersection. I mean, I would, but again, I'm not a tractor trail driver, so there could be a difference. You would exit the site, you would go on 173 east, then you would, at Four Paws, basically, you'd make the left, and then the entrance way for exit 78 west is right there. You hop on it. No, it's seven again.
No, I just said that.
No, that's what he said.
no, you said six.
Okay, sorry, and I could have known you had it the other, okay. Cause I'm thinking
Mike.
6.
When you're getting on to Route 78 west, what exit number are you getting on at?
When you get, what was that, John, again?
From the site, Route 173 east, you make a left onto 78 west, what's that exit interchange? 6 or
Six.
7?
That is 6.
The only thing I would caveat all this with, Mr. Trill, is there is a limitation, and we'd have to speak to, the municipality to understand it, but that talks about only local deliveries, essentially on Bloomsbury up to the exit 6. So to the extent that what we're describing isn't allowed by ordinance, then it would have to go to 7. But I think part of the reasoning that, maybe there's some different opinions, there might be some more direct routes, but I don't want to make a representation that somehow our route would violate, municipal ordinance.
Okay,
Good point,
good point.
good point.
All right, so Mike was asking, you interrupted Mike, I interrupted you.
The only other question I have is architectural, any precedent images that you were thinking about for this, or it's too soon?
Too soon.
Mike, you were the guy who we both interrupted. Is there anything else?
I'm good for the
Or
moment.
did you forget everything?
Well, I might have, but I don't remember if I forgot it. So,
Fair enough. Want to ask any board members?
Any board members have any questions? Joe?
You mentioned Amazon a little while ago, what in the parking discussion. Are you, when you are bringing that into the comparison, is that as a distribution center compared to this facility? Would that be considered light industrial?
I think that was just a reference to styles of design and what have you, but yeah, that's typically distribution. This is not that. So that's typically cross dock and for more quicker turnover vehicles on and off the property. That's not our intention here.
What do you mean by cross dock?
Cross dock just means there's a dock on both sides of the building,
All right.
on the long sides of the building, just easier to move product.
And why would the distribution center need more parking spaces than a place that's gonna have people in there working the light industrial?
I mean, Amazon it's a tough reference because it is its own animal. It's got different employee ratios than a lot of other folks out there. So it's hard to really
Because they're highly automated, right? So
compare
there's gonna be
Amazon.
fewer parking.
Yeah, I just wouldn't, I don't think there's any similarities to Amazon to this. I mean, we can provide a required number of parking from what the applicant is understanding in his initial, market discussions with brokers and what have you, is they wouldn't need that much parking. It was really a good faith effort to try to reduce coverage, but to the extent the board's uncomfortable with the parking, a compliant number of parking spaces could be provided. Could be banked too, another scenario. Obviously, we get the site plan, it could be a banked scenario where if they're not needed, they'd be green. And if the, tenant comes down the road 10, 15 years down the road and needs the parking, it could be built. That might be a nice hybrid scenario, but again, a discussion, I think it's, we would like to have it at a site plan level.
Gary, do you have a question?
Yes, and this is, if they can't properly answer, perhaps Mr. Joel can. For light industrial use, is there a noise restriction?
Well, the state noise code is NJAC
I don't care about
Leave
that part, to
7
be honest with you, but is
29.
there something
Yeah.
that prohibits
it's either
it from being so loud there?
65 decibels during the day and 50 decibels at night. But what's the zoning, first of all, what's the current zoning of the property? You said it's ROM, correct?
Correct.
What are the various adjacent lots zoned? Can you go around the perimeter? Do you have any residential? zoning?
No, so it's all ROM in this area, yeah. So ROM, which is like, there's a 94 acre parcel directly to the west. This small lot is zoned ROM as well. And
Utility
then
building.
you have the pharmaceutical company, which is ROM.
Oh, I believe the answer is gonna be 50 decibels is gonna be the limit. And to meet that, if they had to meet that limit, if you had to, I assume that you would propose some sort of sound walls instead or sound fencing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, the zoning does require all operations within the building, so.
Yeah, but it's the hitching. It's if
I
you're
think that's where I was going to,
Right.
so that light industrial decibel level is for the manufacturing within the building itself.
no, that's
It's
for the site.
Operation.
It's for
Well,
the
that-
operation.
because he just said within,
I understand, but what I'm, okay, let me clarify my question to make sure it's clear. I assume that a tractor trailer the trailer being hitched to the tractor is gonna result in more than 50 decibels. So if that's the case, and I'm correct, in order to meet the 50 decibels at the property line, I assume, but I don't know, that's why, what are you gonna propose?
We'd have to mitigate that, so to the extent that some external portion of the property, the HVAC, the tractor trailer hitching, whatever. Would exceed, the maximum allowed at the property line, then it would be on the applicant. Can't ask for relief from that, they would have to mitigate. Mr. Trill mentioned the sound wall, that's, the most obvious in terms of external sound. But, we'd have to do a study and we'd have to understand what that is and make the appropriate representations to the board, but we would comply with the state statute as well as the ordinance in terms of what I was saying.
It's not a
inside the-
statute, it's a regulation, the DEP regulation. I'm gonna try to get it up on my, right now.
And I guess at this point in time, as you guys are looking to move forward here, not having a tenant, it's really next to impossible to even estimate or project on work hours if this is gonna be a 24/7 or not, because that clearly will impact the sound matter. So.
and so.
Yeah, again, it might be putting the cart before the horse, but in similar settings in other municipalities, and it may not be this board's pleasure, but oftentimes a preliminary approval is sought by the applicant and then a final once there's tenants and specifics known. That may be appropriate here in this case, but not knowing the tenant, I agree with you, there would be certain questions potentially that could be difficult to answer or not be able to answer, or representations that we couldn't make just because we wouldn't know for sure. So that might be a route that's appropriate in this case.
Are you familiar with Bridgeport, Bridgepoint 78, you're on Route 22, the warehousing? Would you consider that to be the same light industrial use? So what you're,
There's a number of different
Concept.
buildings there, so it just depends on the tenant. From what I recall, I don't think it was only, light industrial wasn't the only permitted use there.
Okay.
I think it was a formerly contaminated site and they were looking for tax incentives to have a developer come in and redevelop the entire industrial park. So again, there's all different tenants in there, and I'm pretty sure a few of them are even subdivided the building, so it's difficult to say.
and then my last question, I note that the private residence existing dwelling that's there is 280 feet from the building. Is that the best that can be done to stay away from that building or that dwelling?
So that,
Are you maxed out going towards the interstate, going towards the upper, the northwest corner, that sort of thing? Cause John, does that prohibit them from having to do things because they're beyond the 200 foot?
Yep, at this point, we're not sure if there's a use for that house or not. You know, so it's possible that it's removed or it's discontinued its use. But obviously, you know, it's something we want to think about more. And we want to talk more with the municipality as to whether there's something appropriate to do with that. But that's not necessarily driving our, you know, big picture goals or intentions there.
So is that house part of the property that is being purchased, or is that individual?
It is part of the property being purchased, but whether it's retained, whether it's used for something else, whether it's removed, you know, I think.
So just so you know, if that house remains there, that's gonna be two principal uses on the site. You probably need a D variance, so you better tell these guys that as
It will
part of
not
this
be a house.
application, that house is getting
It
knocked
will
down.
not be a house.
Okay.
That house has some historic value.
That's
Yeah,
where I'm
that-
going with it, Mr. Kelly. I don't know.
It's
Well, then-
not just a.
Okay, then you better be proposing a subdivision.
Yeah,
The mechanism, we are not proposing to have a single family house on this lot with the warehouse. We weren't sure if it was gonna meet some sort of historic criteria or something.
I don't think, and excuse me for interrupting. At the state level, it is not on the register.
Understood.
So it's not at that level. However, I think locally, I mean, we all know that house, that's.
Yep.
And Mr. Paternostro was in the audience, so he did a lot of work on getting that thing refurbished. To its current condition. Now, I don't drive past there that often, but it's right, I mean, the house is still in really good
Yeah.
shape. And it's a
I mean,
really, very
Could turn
attractive
into a
house.
maintenance
Yep.
building for the
Hey,
facility.
I don't wanna trip on any jurisdictional issues, Mr. Drill, so, you know, we wanna just.
I think for purposes of this concept review, you have to assume that house is getting removed.
Your point, well taken, John, under the circuit, right?
Now, to answer Gary's question, I just looked at the New Jersey noise code, it's NJAC 7:29, but 1.1 deals with when you have an industrial, commercial facility adjacent to a residential zone, they don't. So it's 7:29-1.2. 1.2A, I'm sorry, it's 1.2. 1.2A deals with industrial, commercial, adjacent to a residential, which is not the case. That's where it's 50 decibels during the day and 65 at night. What would apply here is 7:29-1.2B. I'm just gonna read it. No person shall cause, suffer, allow, or permit sound from any industrial, commercial, service facility, not service, that's community service facility, when measured at the property line of any other commercial facility of any affected person in the excess of the following. It's 65 decibels during the day and night, and it doesn't specify that it's just inside the building. And then when you look at they have exceptions. 7:29-1.5 are the exceptions from having to comply. Emergency energy release devices, that's an exception. When public health or safety is involved, emergency work to provide electric, water, or public utilities, that's an exception. Public roadways is an exception. Emergency electricity generators in use during an emergency are an exception, but if you're exercising them, they have to comply. So there's no exception for trucks. So in my opinion, the hitching, unhitching, loading, unloading, whatever, would all have to comply with the 65 decibels. And if they didn't, just again, what are the different potential mitigation devices that you could install to make sure that nothing more than 65 decibels goes over the property line?
I agree with you. I know you were just saying impossible, but I agree with the idea. It would likely be a sound wall along that northern barrier of the property. I don't think along the south.
Because I think actually the southeast would be the impacted area, because you got Four Paws, another business there, and then potentially along the south. Because right on the other side of the river there is other
Right, the resident down here, yeah, I mean, you know, it would have to be studied, but it could be some sort of L shape or some sort of U shape, you know, type scenario.
Are there, just curious too, are there any, restrictions with this being industrial use in terms of the use of hazardous materials? Will any of this manufacturing or?
Mention of that in the.
The ordinance does, talk to that not being permitted.
Okay. So you shouldn't have to worry about contamination of the site with it's a for.
Correct. Any other questions?
I have a question. So this would be accessed off of 173. Are there truck restrictions on 173 there?
No, I believe the only restriction is, there is a sign that I've seen, again, I would have to, you know, consult municipal officials or see what kind of ordinance, but on Bloomsbury Road, there is a sign, doesn't say wait, just says no local deliveries or something like that, but 173 has no restriction to my knowledge.
I thought it did.
Actually, 173 does have a weight restriction.
Yeah.
However, local delivery, which would be what this facility is accepting and.
They're not local delivery.
No, it's that stuff coming in.
They got stuff coming in and they're going out.
And stuff going out.
Not to the local area, it's going.
Well, if they built a facility, that would then become local, in my
No,
opinion.
no.
No.
Local delivery means delivering somewhere in a locality, like if someone ordered cabinets that were made here, yeah, they'd have an exception, the truck could bring it there, but if someone down 78 orders cabinets, that's not gonna be considered a local delivery.
Well, I could see down 78, but then how would Cool the Pharmacy be getting deliveries? Because they're to the left of this facility. And they've got tractor trailers going in there all the time. And I would consider Cool the
Okay,
Pharmacy a
you're saying
local delivery.
deliveries coming in are local, but going out would not be.
Well, yeah, but once you come in, you gotta be able to get out.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. That's what, in my opinion, the trucks going out or don't have an exception.
Well, isn't that, John, I mean, a kind of a paramount issue here? I mean, if that's the case.
Can you guys look into that?
Yeah.
And get back to the board about that? Because I haven't researched that. That's my off the cuff. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, there's a weight restriction you're gonna find for 173. What you need to find is the applicability of the local deliveries
Right.
and whether or not it would apply.
In other words, what Paul is suggesting is anything going in or out would be local, and my gut tells me coming in would be local, but going out, unless it's going out somewhere locally, would not be local, but again, I haven't done any research
We'll
on it.
research it, we want to build a facility that can't be accessed, so. we
You're right.
understand.
Right, yeah, right.
Kind of an important issue.
Yeah. I have one more question. That overpass over the Musconetcong going to 7, is
Okay,
that weight restricted?
the bridge of
Yeah,
173, okay.
Is that weight restricted?
There was a weight restriction, but I think when they upgraded the river, upgraded the bridge, that was.
But why would they
5, 6
upgrade it if
5,
there's no access allowed after it?
5 or 6 years ago? Was that one roughly?
But I think what has to happen, we need to find out for sure, because we could just
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll find out.
speculate all day long.
Right.
Check the bridge.
We're just going around in a big circle. They have to find out and maybe, schedule them for next month for a continuation of this, but let's just keep on going for now.
Okay. Anything else?
I have a kind of basic question. For a development company that's looking to reward its investors, make money and have a profitable, efficiently operating facility of this dimension, with lots of things happening potentially, in companies, you're operating in northern New Jersey, you're looking at the area down here. So
Can you talk louder so we can
you
hear
have
you?
a pretty big geographic view of the possibilities where you can conduct your business. What is it about this site, this place, with some limitations, like only one entrance coming and going onto 173 to service customers and suppliers and everything that goes with it? What is it about this place that you believe makes it this is the spot, we wanna make this kind of an investment, or this kind of effort to
Okay.
build this kind of facility. What is
It's,
it about
it's
this place?
proximity to Interstate 78, it's labor pool, it's overall demand and access to large demographic areas. And you touched on one development right over in Phillipsburg, that was very successful. That was, I think, north of 2 million square feet that leased up in 4 or 5 different buildings. So just in general, New Jersey alone is one of the most sought after markets for industrial development and investment. And that has actually reduced vacancy down to 4% throughout New Jersey. So demand, despite everything going on from a macro level, is still very strong. It's obviously you really can't get any closer to a major highway.
So access to and from
Yeah,
78
right.
is really.
Right, it's the main selling point, right. Right.
Are you saying that the vacancy rate for industrial buildings in general, or light or heavy industrial?
In general,
Down to 4%?
yeah, and it was as low as 2.5%.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm just curious,
really
what's
low.
the occupancy of the one in Phillipsburg? It's pretty
Good.
empty.
no, they're at 100% occupancy. Shopify took the last building, which was 1.1 million square feet. Then they sold their distribution business to Flexport, and they still occupy that building. Yeah, they're at 100% occupancy. They may have some trailer parking that they're looking to still lease out, maybe 40 or 50 trailer stalls, but yeah.
They might not all be in there, but they're paying.
Someone's
They're signed. Yeah, somebody's paying the rent.
All right, no further questions?
So you guys wanna, can you schedule them to come back and just answer the final question?
All right. All right.
And when's the next board meeting?
Oh,
It's
November 9th.
November 9th.
and
So can we put them on first for another, continue the concept review?
I have nothing else right now, so yeah.
Okay, you guys available November 9th?
Yes, yeah.
can I give you a little laundry list to
Sure,
to
Yeah,
check out?
if any, right, if anyone has any outstanding questions, let's put it on the table now, so when they come back, we can have all questions answered.
Okay, this gets to the weight restrictions and so forth, jurisdictions. I think you have at least 3 things you need to check on. The Route 173 weight limit and the potential restriction local delivery issue. Okay, that's one. The bridge that was just redone again 5-6 years ago over the Muskinec Con, which is part of 173, if there's any restrictions with that. And then what we haven't really talked about, well, you mentioned it, I believe. You're gonna have to call the county regarding Route 632, because 632, in my opinion, will certainly be used to get to the half of exit 6 that works. Because it's only a half of an interchange. So those would be
Call the county for what?
to see if there's any restriction on that road.
Okay.
Because they will be using at least a small section of that road, the varying terms.
So you got 4 things, got it. Any board members have anything else that they want addressed when these guys come back? Mike has the 4 items.
And you don't have any idea of the number of trucks that would be going in and out because you don't do the.
Correct.
No, I mean, well, obviously, we'll have to do a study that'll reflect, average industry type, numbers, but we don't have specifics.
But remember what he offered? He said that they could come in for a preliminary approval only and not come in for final till they had actual tenants, correct?
I said that was one thing for the board to consider, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the other question would be the house and what.
Yeah, I think we need to find out if there's any restrictions. We don't. That's the tail wagging the dog for us, but at the same time, we didn't wanna just knock it over and find out we're upsetting somebody, so we've had, some conversations, but I think we'll find out if it has any relevancy to anybody, and if it doesn't, it's not part of the project. If there's a use for it or a desire to keep it just from a local standpoint, then we'll explore that as well.
John, is the subdivision option, is that even an option, being in its
Well,
a non-permitted use?
Why, what do you mean, why, well, actually, no, it's not,
Right,
because
it's
it's not
not.
permitted.
it's not permitted,
Yeah.
Well, that's,
correct.
Yeah, you're right.
okay.
But even if we put it on a small lot, it'd be intensive.
Well, forget about that, it's, residence is not allowed in the zone anyway.
Yeah,
That's, so they're
The
gonna be
house
variance
being on the
anyway.
property, the house remaining on the property, the house being part of a subdivision to keep it all D-variant.
understood.
Okay. Then, right, thank you very much.
Yeah,
We'll see you on
thank you.
November 9th.
Appreciate the board.
All right,
Have a great day.
so, Brian Baylor is here.
Yes, for the record, Brian Baylor just showed up.
All right, we got a couple more items.
Yeah, why don't we take a quick restart?
All right, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess and then we'll get right back into it. All right, we're back to business. Next item is discussions and recommendation on ordinance 113-2023, chapter 16-3 of the Township Code. To revise certain definitions and permitted use in the ROM 16-18 district. This is a master plan consistency review. So I'll turn that over to Kendra.
Yeah, so, in a consistency review, your job as a planning board, and Mr. Joel can probably tell you better than I can, is really to find whether this ordinance is consistent with the master plan, is inconsistent with the master plan, or is not inconsistent with the master plan. And I would suggest to you that you can find that it is not inconsistent with the master plan. There are several sections in the 2011 land use plan, and I like to use land use plan instead of the reexamination plan as the basis for this. And I'm just gonna quote a couple of the sections. On page 8 of the 2011 land use plan, it talks about goals as it relates to the Highlands Regional Master Plan. And while we're not in the Highlands, well, we are, but we don't have a Highlands consistent plan right now. There are certain areas that are planning areas of which the ROM district is in. One of the goals is to provide appropriate patterns of compatible residential, commercial, and industrial development, redevelopment, and economic growth in or adjacent to areas already utilized for such purposes, and it discourage piecemeal, scattered, or inappropriate development. So I would say that the ordinance as written being proposed would certainly be consistent with the idea that what is being proposed would be an appropriate pattern of compatible development. So that's one section of the 2011 land use plan. The other one is on page 10. Page 10 talks about general land use goals and objectives across the board for the township. And one of them on page 10 indicates that one of the goals is to establish zoning standards that will limit the impact of new development on existing neighborhoods and developed areas. So I would propose to you that would be something that is certainly consistent with what is being proposed with this particular ordinance. The other section in the ordinance specifically talks to the ROM zone. This is on page 25 of the 2011 land use plan element. It's the last sentence as it relates to the ROM zone in the first paragraph, and it states it is the primary intent of this zone to encourage high quality research and office park development. Uses which require large amounts of truck activity are discouraged. So I would also, in my opinion, is what's being proposed as far as the changes to the ROM zone that's in this ordinance also dovetail nicely with what is being said in the page 25 of the 2011 plan. So in my opinion, I think that the board could certainly find that it is not inconsistent with the 2011 master plan. Land use plan.
Okay, let me just, so the MLUL 40:55D-26 provides that prior to the adoption of a development regulation, revision or amendment thereto, the planning board shall make and transmit to the governing body within 35 days after referral, a report, including identification of any provisions in the proposed development regulation, revision or amendment, which are inconsistent with the master plan, and recommendations concerning those inconsistencies, and recommendations regarding any other matters that the board deems appropriate. So let me just first ask Kendra, are there any, in your opinion, any provisions of the ordinance that are inconsistent with any provisions of the master plan that you're aware of?
No,
Okay, so the board could make a motion to find that proposed ordinance 113-2023 is not inconsistent with the master plan. Now, having said that, the board can also make recommendations on any other matter the board deems appropriate. So let me ask Andrew, do you have any recommendations on any other matters that might not have nothing to do with master plan consistency?
yeah, I do. So there, it appears that there's a typo on the second page of the ordinance under the definition of light manufacturing. It's the very last sentence. The change, adds a negative, to the sentence. It says light manufacturing does not include such activities or materials, and then it goes on and actually the sentence doesn't make sense. My suggestion is that, after it says such activities or materials, the word that should be added. Create, cross out no, major hazard from fire or explosion or produce no toxic, take out the no there. So it shall read.
Yeah, can you read the sentence?
Light manufacturing does not include such activities or materials that create major hazard, which probably should be hazards,
Hazard.
from fire or explosion or produce toxic or corrosive fumes, gas, smoke, odors, obnoxious dust or vapor, offensive noise or vibration, glare, flashes, or objectionable effluent.
Can you make one other recommendation that they number the pages on the ordinance?
Yeah, I can make that recommendation. So page 2. Other than that, I don't have any other suggestions.
Does the board have any questions for Kendra?
I have one. So you're suggesting or recommending that we say it is not inconsistent.
I do.
How does that differ from recommending that it is consistent?
Well, in my opinion, the way that I like to distinguish the two is if it's consistent, there's very specific language in the land use plan that supports it, meaning the ordinance is almost exactly what, the land use plan element has language that is exactly.
That specifically recommends, for example,
the-
that the ordinance be amended to do X, Y, Z, and then it does X, Y, Z, that would be basically
Consistent.
100% consistent.
Yeah.
I agree with Kendra's opinion on that.
Any other questions?
Do we need a motion? Yeah, a motion to declare that ordinance 113-2023 is not inconsistent with the master plan, and then a motion to make a recommendation to correct typos and add page numbers.
All right, so the first motion,
I'll make the first motion.
Gary?
That was Joe.
Yep.
Mr. Mark Scuderi,
Yes.
Mr. Paul Beam,
Yes.
Mr. Joseph Chicallo,
Yes.
Mr. Brian Baylor,
Yes.
Ms. Kathy Cullen,
Yes.
Mr. Joseph Fiamma,
Yes.
Mr. Gary Hill,
Yes.
Ms. Andrea Sherlock,
Yes.
Mr. George Bravo.
Yes,
All right, the next motion will be to correct the typos based on Kendra's
Right,
recommendation.
recommendation to correct the typos and add page numbers.
I'll
Joseph?
make that motion.
Joseph Chicallo,
second,
and then George. Okay. Mark Scuderi,
Yes.
Paul Beam,
Yes.
Joseph Chicallo,
Yes.
Brian Baylor,
Yes.
Kathy Cullen,
Yes.
Joseph Fiamma,
Yes.
Gary Hill,
Yes.
Andrea Sherlock,
Yes.
George Bravo.
yes,
All right, we'll move right on to management of escrows. Anything behind? Mr. Check is here. Any questions on the escrows? We can vote on it.
No,
All right, check the review.
information.
All right, perfect. And then next, the affordable housing update.
So Ingerman is moving along. Mike, you wanna give him an update?
Sure. I wish I could be a little more definitive because we're darn close to being, breaking ground. We had a pre-construction meeting with the applicant, so I'm gonna say 3 weeks ago or so. They have since received county approval. There are some action items the township has to take care of, but,
But that county approval was long in coming.
oh boy.
That was one of the biggest problems.
Ain't that the truth? So no, the next thing I believe is you'll see the equipment being delivered to the site, materials being delivered to the site, and they're gonna be getting started, and I would be, what's today's date? The 12th, okay, I would be very surprised if they don't break ground this month still.
Yeah, and
They're ready to roll.
and the closing for them to purchase the property is, like, very close.
Yeah, it's maybe November 1st, maybe.
Something like that.
Okay.
Mike, what they do with the landscape planning? They had called me several times saying that they needed to reduce the landscaping. We went back and forth. I haven't heard since I made my recommendations to them.
Well, it's still on their plate because I brought it up myself during the pre-con meeting because I knew it was still out there.
Yeah,
And they're looking at it. They said, yeah, we know we're gonna, there was something about some of the plantings were pretty expensive apparently.
yeah, so,
Oh.
so just so the board's aware, I was contacted by Ingerman, with a revised landscape plan that reduced the landscaping by almost half.
Whoa.
I said to them that, first of all, they'd have to come back to the board for an amended, site plan in order to do that.
Right, that's not like a field condition
No,
thing.
definitely not.
No.
So I showed them where the biggest concerns I had as far as if you're going to reduce it and you still have to come back to the board, I would like you to concentrate on the buffer areas, of course. And they were to get me a revised landscape plan, so we would review it conceptually, but I haven't seen anything since.
Yeah, and they did also say, and, you know, right now, the landscaping plan was approved. This is the landscaping plan for
Correct.
That's correct.
for the site.
That's right.
And that's the way it is.
That's the way it is.
And that's the way it will remain.
Right.
And it sounds like they probably will need to come back here with an amended plan if they wanna change it as much as they seem to wanna change it.
Yeah.
But that's one of the last things that is installed on a site, so that's not happened to 2024, for sure. So basically, I think that's gonna be somewhat of an open issue until they progress a little further with the site and the project, and then they're forced to either come back here
Yeah.
or plant what's been
Right,
approved.
or
Yeah.
comply.
Yep.
Right.
Just out of curiosity, on that landscape plan, and it's been so long, I don't remember, did we dictate size?
We did,
Yes.
We did, okay.
Yeah.
we
And
did.
Because I thought
Species,
maybe if there was a
obviously,
cost issue, they could, but they'd have to come in and ask us for it.
They gotta come in.
Right,
Yeah.
yep, got it, yep.
Don't wanna negotiate against yourself.
Nope, nope,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay, thanks.
All right, that's everything?
Mr. Chairman, how about the other,
We're slowly, Mike, you wanna give them an update on? I forgot to call today, we are like this close to filing the eminent domain action to take the sewer lines. Because the good faith negotiations, we gave our last offer, and I think we gave them until, it might be the end of this week or last
Yeah, I don't remember reading. what
or last week to either say yes or we're filing to take it. Now, the other one, the stormwater, why don't you give them an update on that? Because I'll cue it up. On the stormwater, conceptually, not the details, conceptually, we actually reached an agreement where it wouldn't cost any money to take the thing and relocate it. But the details, there's a little hang up with the details. So that's an
Yeah.
engineering thing. So Mike, why don't you?
Yeah, and I think it's certainly resolvable. There's the, Mr. Slack, who is the property owner that abuts the property on two sides.
Listen, I tell you what, this
Alright.
one's highly confidential. Do you think we should go into closed session on this one? I know that no one's here, but if you're going to closed session, it's not in the public minutes. It's no problem on the
No, I
sewer
don't
thing.
think, to be honest with you.
Okay, well, let me just, okay,
Okay, yep, fine. So. The Mr. Slack hired his own engineer to do an independent review, because that makes three now. Me, us, and Bowler, the
Bowler for
the
Petrucci.
Petrucci's engineer. So there, we've all looked at those comments that have been raised, and we think there's a simple solution that will satisfy Mr. Slack's engineer, and that's still we're still waiting to get something back. So
Right.
it's nothing that I perceive as any great
And this is
consequence.
taking a little bit more time, but quite frankly, it's better that this takes a little bit more time and we can relocate this thing for free than have to institute an eminent domain, then we're gonna have to pay something for it, including the attorney's fees, to go that route. Sewer thing, we're gonna probably have no choice, just because, gonna be in the minutes. The people that we're negotiating with, at some times are not reasonable. How's that?
Have a different opinion.
All right, next meeting is November 9th, 2023. Motion to adjourn.
Actually, before you do that, John, do we need to discuss what we discussed earlier?
No, I talked to Mike about it. Mike and I are I'll be taking care of a letter in the probably by the middle of next week.
Nothing sooner?
No, tomorrow's Friday.
Okay, all right. Well, they are just ready to roll.
I understand. Yep.
Okay.
All right, motion to adjourn, anyone? Gary? Joseph? All in favor?
Bye.
Yeah.
All right.
They agree.